so much for joining us. My name is Cassie Groupsman, and I'm the Director of Talent Development at the Alliance and Chamber here in town. And today we're going to talk about some really impressive employers that we have from around the Cedar Valley and how technology is changing career paths at their companies and what some really promising jobs and career pathways look like at those companies. And then we also have the unique perspective of someone from the Department of Education that can tell us about some defined career pathways that they've worked on over the past few years. Before we get started though, I would really like to get a sense for who we have in the audience with us today. So just raise your hand if this applies to you. How many of you work at a manufacturer? Okay. How many of you work in healthcare? Oh. How many of you work in technology, IT? How many educators do we have in the room? There you are. How many of you work in education but you are not a teacher or a professor? Okay. How many of you work for a community-based organization? Okay. Did I miss anyone? Has anyone not raised their hand yet? How many of you are parents of a student that is K through 12? How many of you are parents of a student who is doing some sort of education beyond high school? Okay, so we've got lots of parents in the room. Perfect. Well, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and let them introduce themselves to you. So give your name, where you work, and what you do.
Hi, my name is Kevin Harberts. I'm the founder, president, CEO of Crichton Engineered Metals, which is just up the road here in the Cedar Falls Industrial Park. We employ about 100 people. We're a metal fabricator, so we specialize in metal spinning and laser cutting and anything with metal we can probably make. So.
Hi, my name's Lynn Klein. I work for New Aldea Lifescape Senior Living Community. We have independent living, assisted living, and long-term care there. We have about 400 employees, and I work in the Human Resources Department. I do mostly recruitment and selection.
Hi, I'm Joe Collins. I'm with the Iowa Department of Education, Division of Community Colleges and Workforce Preparation. So all the educators that don't like the K-12 people, I'm not one of them, no. And I'm here to talk about some career pathways like Cassie had mentioned, and some of you have them in front of you. The last group took a ton of them, but I also have cards up here with our website where you can download these, and I'll talk quite a bit more about that project and what kind of went into it and the deliverables from there as we progress.
I'm Nick Cash. I work at Jam City, which is a mobile game company based out of Los Angeles. We have 7 people here in Cedar Falls and about 500 all over, really. And I work as a software architect, so mostly programming the games. And I went through the entire Cedar Falls school system, so if you have any questions about any of that process from someone who's been relatively recently and joined the other side as an employer, feel free to ask. The dark side.
Alrighty, so we have some unique perspectives here. We obviously have 3 employers from manufacturing, healthcare, and IT, and then Joe giving that perspective on what those career pathways look like from the research they've done, giving us kind of that statewide perspective. I encourage you all to ask questions throughout today. This doesn't need to be formal. Don't feel like you need to raise your hand. If something comes up based on what someone has said, feel free to ask at that time. You don't need to wait for everyone to answer the question. As much conversation as we can have today, the better. So don't feel like you need to raise your hand or like this needs to be formal. I'll kick it off with a couple questions so you get a feel for who these people employ and what those people do and what those pathways look like, and then I'll throw it to you for some questions. So let's start off by explaining what kinds of employees you have at your companies. So give us kind of the allocation of what types of employees you have in which areas and what they do.
Okay, so being a manufacturer, we have obviously general laborers, we have project managers, we have senior management, middle management. We've grown tremendously the last 5-6 years, and we're having a real hard time right now keeping up with the growth because we can't find employees. So I spend a lot of time actually going into the high schools and junior highs and trying to convince kids that manufacturing doesn't have to be what their fathers did or their grandfathers. It's not the same. And so that's been my crusade for quite a few years now, to change that perception of what manufacturing is.
Well, at New Aldea, we have obviously the leadership and administrative type of positions, but we start off with the staff that works the floor. So as you can imagine, we have our environmental services staff, those that are doing the cleaning and the housekeeping to run a nursing facility. We have dietary staff, so we have to feed breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks 365 days a year. So we've got a whole team of folks that do that, and then obviously we have the nursing staff. So we have CNAs, that's our largest pool of employees, and then the next level up from that would be LPNs and RNs that work for us. The RNs generally are working either on our skilled unit or they will be, so that's post-acute, they were in the hospital, they're patients rather than residents. And then we'll have that next level of management, those will be RNs that are overseeing the various departments, so there's a career path there. And then obviously we have the other areas to support our operations. So we've got the therapy department, so we have OT, PT, speech, all are part of our team and our organization. And then in addition to that, we have obviously social services and transportation. The folks we have appointments they need to go to outside of the facility, so we have to coordinate all of those appointments. So we have a staff that administers that as well.
Can you define CNA, LPN, RN in case those acronyms
Oh,
get
sorry.
confusing?
Oh, I'm sorry, I should, yes, since we don't have any healthcare folks in here. Yeah. CNA stands for Certified Nursing Assistant. So they're helping residents with all the activities of daily living. You know, getting up in the morning, going to the toilet, getting dressed, all that kind of stuff. LPN stands for Licensed Practical Nurse. So they're doing assessments, they're passing medication, providing cares and treatments to the residents we have. And then RN is obviously registered nurse. And they obviously can operate at a higher level. And then PT would stand for physical therapy, and then we have PTAs, which are physical therapy assistants, and then occupational therapists, and then we have they're called CODAs, Certified Occupational Therapy Assistants. So there's a whole slew of those. I think that was all. Yep.
Nick, what about you?
So here in Iowa, we are pretty heavily focused on engineering, so pretty much everybody's a software engineer or what we would call an engineering adjacent role. So for us, that means tech artists and stuff like that. Across the company, we employ everybody that is required to make games. So we have game designers, we have artists, we have quality assurance folks, we have business intelligence, all the leadership positions, people who focus on data pipeline and machine learning, everybody. So I would say engineers are probably like a third of the organization or something like that.
Joe, give us an idea of what work you've done with career pathways and what these are sitting on the tables in front of everyone.
Okay, and it's a great segue from all the acronyms. So I was hired by the state of Iowa through the Iowa Department of Education a little bit less than 2 years ago to try to help support what are called sector partnerships or sector boards around the state. It's when a group of employers from the same industry or sector come together to collectively address their workforce issues. With the idea that a group of manufacturers can accomplish a lot more than one manufacturer on a number of different levels. Is anybody involved in a local sector board or sector partnership? They've got some really good ones around here, Northeast Iowa. A lot of them are at least facilitated or administratively managed by somebody from a community college, but not all of them. If you want to grab one of my cards, all of this information, all the information you see in front of you can be downloaded there, as well as a map that shows kind of where they are around the state. There's between 50 and 60, kind of how you slice it or how you define it. majority of which are manufacturing because a lot of what we do in Iowa is manufacturing based. So I was hired to try to help support those groups, either development of new ones or the management or success of the ones that have been in operation for a bit longer. And something that we heard from a lot of these groups when I was hired, in addition to kind of leave me the heck alone, I don't want the government in my business, which is fine, that's not what I do, is that, hey, we wish we had more help to highlight manufacturing in Cedar Falls, or we wish we had more help to highlight the healthcare occupations in Council Bluffs, or wherever that happens to be. So beginning last year, we started doing these deeper dives into different industries. We've completed 4 so far. So last year, and I apologize again, you maybe don't have all 4 at your table, we did IT and energy. And then this year, we completed one for manufacturing, and we just released one for healthcare, or broader industry called sciences, a couple weeks ago. October, I guess, is about a month by now. But the goal of these documents was to really try to highlight at a statewide level all of the things you can do in Iowa in these industries. So IT being an example, Nick, right? Nick works. I'm horrible with names. Nick works on video games in Waterloo, Iowa. That is unheard of, I'll tell you, for younger people in the state. They think you have to go to California, you have to go to Denver, you have to go anywhere else but Iowa. You cannot do video games in Iowa. Well, these documents were created to not only help those students, but job seekers of all ages to better understand what's in their backyard. And you can make a heck of a living working in manufacturing or healthcare within your own city or your own county or wherever that happens to be. But a lot of times we don't know that. It's what you know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And we drive by these places every single day, but without some extra help or assistance, you just don't know. So these documents were created to try to help communities have that conversation with job seekers and students because the communities or the sector partnerships, whoever that happens to be, maybe doesn't have the expertise or the time or the resources to do that. So for these projects that you see in front of you, we did the data kind of mining to see what the Bureau of Labor Statistics and IWD and everybody says what occupations are growing and where. But I'll be the first to tell you that data only says one side of the story. So we took time to do focus groups around the state for all these projects to get direct feedback from employers about does that actually match up. And what we found is sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. We see a lot of employers lowering education requirements to get more people, as well as increasing salaries to keep those people or attract more people. So those documents in front of you, like I said, are on our website for download as well. We're continuing that 2 per year. So next year we've actually just inked out a deal or the plans to do something in construction, skilled trades to encompass architecture, construction, engineering, ACE, you might call it. And then the beginning part of the year, and then the second part of the year, trying to take an approach with transportation logistics. I know that's huge in this area with the corridor, the creative corridor in the Cedar Valley. Lots of transportation careers in this area, so I'm really excited about that work. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, like I said, check out our website, or you can grab me afterwards. I'd be happy to talk about it. Was that good?
Perfect.
I'm a talker. I don't know. I gotta limit my time.
Last session, I had you silent for 10, 15 minutes. That was too long, so
Yeah.
jumped into a question a little sooner. Give us an idea of how technology is changing careers at your companies or even just within your industries. Give us that broad perspective.
Sure. Technology obviously is playing a huge role in manufacturing. 5 years ago, we did not have any robots or much automation at all, and that has changed dramatically. We're running one now. We have another one we're getting ready to hook up. So we're looking for a whole different skill set of employee than we were 5 years ago. But the technology, the computerization of these machines is just unbelievable how fast it's evolving, and what we purchase today, unfortunately, is outdated in a couple of years, and we got to start all over again. So it's a vicious circle, but we have to adapt to that technology, or we wouldn't be here. I couldn't continue to operate my company on the manual side like we were for the first 20 years of our existence. If I continued to do that, I'd be gone. So I have to automate as fast as I can, as much as I can afford. So it's changing rapidly.
How are the, go ahead.
So do you see your workforce in the future being replaced?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. I mean, you can go to Hawkeye and take a 2-year industrial automation class, and I'll hire that kid out of there for $75,000, $80,000 a year, to program the robots. So it's a huge field that's changing. So,
So
yeah.
is that skill set you're looking for?
Yes, that's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else are you looking for? Skill set.
I mean, we unfortunately have to do a lot of training because right now we can't find anybody. There's not anybody to hire, and so we have to steal them from other employers, which is a whole other issue. So it's challenging. So we've resorted to training a lot on our own, just because we can't find what we want.
Is it illegal to take a microphone from a panelist? Kevin and I had a good chat about robotics before this panel, and I just want to mention some of the things that we talked about, because when robotics come up, you often hear that concept of, are people going to be replaced? And we had the opposite conversation. Robotics are how we're going to keep the employees that we have being productive, but being able to be productive with the employees that we have, because we have a lack of available talent, and that's not just in the Cedar Valley or even in Iowa. That's something we're seeing globally. So robotics are how we can upskill our current employees so that they have better jobs, better pay, and they're being more productive, and a company is able to continue growing with the employees that they have. Am I reflecting our conversation appropriately there?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So I just wanted to make a comment on that, because you hear that a lot, and totally understand where that question comes from. But getting that bigger picture of where technology plays into manufacturing and how we grow with our current workforce.
Do you want to talk about how technology is changing?
Can I just give just a quick maybe observation or question? So, in trying to convince kids, I mean, you said there's a stigma with manufacturing. Everyone has in their idea what they think it is.
Right.
And you're talking about programming robotics and things like that. And so being a parent of kids, by the time they get into high school, it's going to be hard to convince them. So, I think middle school, if not elementary, is really where you need to have that path.
Absolutely.
So really, all the robotics clubs that are starting, they're really based in STEM kind of areas right now, but would that be an option for you to be able to bring the manufacturing piece into those robotics clubs? Because those are just going crazy.
Oh, absolutely. It would be.
If you can tie into that, I think that's a great opportunity to try and educate them about what the career path could be.
Oh, I agree, totally, 100%. Yeah.
So do you have those contacts? Do you have the ability to do that? Or if not, I would encourage
We
you to
have
reach
the
out.
ability to do that. I don't know where a lot of the contacts are, so I would need some help with that.
I would reach out to your local school districts. I'm on the Cedar Falls School Board, and I know we would be, interested in any way we could partner with you, so.
Okay, sweet, yeah.
Technology. At New Aldea, we'd like to say that we were farther along than what we are. Electronic health records, you've all heard about that. You've been to the hospital, they're scanning, they're on their computers and things like that. We are kind of halfway there at New Aldea. Our nurses are entering information into the computer system, but they're also pen and paper, writing things down, having to write things in multiple places and things like that. So technology is going to play a key role in helping prevent medical errors and things like that as we move forward, because it will have steps in it and things like that to help ensure that we give the right medication, the right treatments to the right person, and less transcription errors from doctors and things like that. So that's coming for us. It's not completely there. We know we need to do it and we need to make that change, but it does take money to do that. So other things we're doing, or how technology is going to play a role for us to help keep us kind of competitive, is with scheduling. Right now, we are a spreadsheet. We have 400 employees, and not all 400 are on the, some of them have set schedules we don't need to worry about, but a large chunk of our workforce, we're managing that pen and paper. It's in a spreadsheet, we're keeping track and we're publishing it, and we're not getting that information out to our employees very quickly. They have to come in and see it, that kind of thing. So we have purchased some software that's going to help us with that. It's going to have an app on their phone, and they're going to be able to see what their schedule is, and if we have open shifts, they're going to be able to see it in real time and say, hey, I want that. And so they can kind of formalize schedules and things like that. So that's one of our biggest projects that we'll be implementing in 2019. We've already purchased the software. One thing I didn't bring up before, there was some automation, or there was a tool we were using. It was an alarm system, and you'd think that's a good thing to have in a nursing facility, alarms on the beds and things like that, so you can anticipate falls. Well, we found it had the opposite effect. Our staff wasn't doing the walking rounds to check on people, and by the time the alarm went off, it was too late. So we went alarm-free, and now we have a regular schedule, and our falls have decreased, moving away from technology. So that was kind of an interesting, you would think the opposite, but so.
Nick, I know this one is a little different for you.
Yeah, so I work for a tech company which has all of the connotations you would expect. Our business is in the cloud, we produce apps, we make use of machine learning and AI and all these things. So our whole business is tech, and we have people all over the globe. So we use tech to communicate, to collaborate, between Google Docs and video conferencing and all that sort of stuff. Our business really only works because of the tech. It only exists because of the tech. I didn't mention it before, but Crystal Wolf, who founded MySpace, is our CEO and founder of Jam City. So we're working with people who know the tech industry very well and kind of take that to heart. So really, for us, it permeates everything we do. We're all about tech all day, every day.
Do you want to give us kind of that macro view of how tech is changing careers?
Yeah, so when you hear the word automation, you think manufacturing. They were one of the initial industries to really get into it, kind of 70s and 80s, so it's just become kind of synonymous with manufacturing. But we're seeing a lot more in healthcare. I know one of the panelists from the earlier sessions of the entire group talked a little bit about some of the things they're seeing in smart technology. So smart homes, as more people want to age at home or recover at home. How do we ensure that they're taking their medication on time, the right amount? Are they feeding? Are they eating? Doing that sort of thing. So you're seeing a lot of really cool things come out to allow them to communicate with their doctor or nurse, as well as like a smart medication bottle that says, when did they open it? What was the wait before and after they took it to make sure they're taking the right dosage, as well as was the refrigerator open? You can kind of see what's in the refrigerator. Did they eat the sandwich I made them? Did they, and then alarms will go off. If the refrigerator has not been open, if a dose has been missed, there's just all these really, really cool things being done in healthcare in terms of artificial intelligence and automation, as well as you see kind of around the world, particularly Japan has gotten really way out ahead of this. You've got all these robots in hospitals, even robots at home, which are kind of creepy. They give like people hugs at home. It's kind of bizarre, and you just see this happening. In food service as well. We're seeing this a lot in retail, a lot of food service. So like at McDonald's, I don't know if anybody's been at McDonald's, you have the kiosk out front. I was actually at Hy-Vee in Waterloo, and they had like this, right by the pharmacy, they had like it was like a screen, but it had a guy on it. And it was kind of funny because it was like an AI person you could talk to, and somebody had put like earmuffs on, so it was kind of funny. But you see this everywhere kind of popping up to try to get ahead of some of those labor shortages, but to just gain more efficiencies and be more competitive in a global market. But food services, you see a lot of machines being made to make cheeseburgers, to make pizzas, to make almost anything that a person does now. You're seeing that, and it's not necessarily doom and gloom, but any job that's really repetitive, it could be done by a computer, and you're going to see that happen. One of the areas that I'm a little more concerned of than others is within transportation when you talk about autonomous vehicles, especially the over-the-road, long-haul truck driver jobs that have really built middle-income America a lot of times. It's one of those last jobs you get into without a lot of experience in education and make a lot of money. What that's going to do, I don't know how far out it is, but that's something that is on the horizon that we need to be thinking about. What are those people going to do? And to Kevin's point, it might just be a different job. They're still a truck driver, but maybe they're updating the machine as it's driving, or software updates, or they're troubleshooting with an iPad what's going on, or changing the route on the fly if there's an accident, stuff like that. So it's similar jobs, just a different role. And so I'm kind of curious, and also I see a lot of opportunities in that automation, more so than like the robots are taking over. It's just going to change how we look at different types of jobs. And it puts a lot of onus on educators, right? And we got a lot of educators. How the heck do I train people for these jobs, right? Because I don't know what it's going to be yet. So I know one of the panelists talked about, it seemed like 3 of their big skills that we need are problem solving, critical thinking, and desire to learn are what we're looking at in terms of 21st century skills a lot of times, to be able to adapt to those changes in the workplace, or in that workplace of the future at least.
I'll piggyback off of that and ask, what are those skills that you're looking for as you're hiring employees beyond education? What are those skills? What are those soft skills? And is the demand for different skills, is that changing as technology becomes more and more prevalent in your industries?
Yeah, it is changing. For us, we look for the CNC operators. Welding is a big thing for us, so we're always looking for welders. But we're looking for somebody that can obviously add, and math. Math is important. We need the geometry, all that stuff that they need. We look for a lot of things, but a lot of times, honestly, some of these kids, they just don't have that. And so, we started a thing called Crichton U, which is the Crichton University, and so we run classes around the clock almost, training in conjunction with Hawkeye to help us with that. So it's ever changing, but that for us anyway, that skill set is just changing so fast, it's hard to know exactly what we need. But attitude, aptitude is very, very important, and from that point, if they don't have a lot on the skill side, we can train for our industry for that. But we have to have an attitude and an aptitude there of some sort that they want to be there.
I would say in our environment, obviously, we need truly caring and compassionate individuals to work for us, to do a good job, to show that empathy when they're working with the residents we have here. They need to be flexible and adaptable. Specifically our nurses and our CNAs, they never know in some situations who they're going to work with. And so they have to quickly be able to figure out and divide and conquer how they're going to take care of those 20 residents between the 2 of them. So good, effective communication, some initiative, some leadership, and some adaptability, I think, are key things to help them be successful in our environment. I think are some of the keys.
So for us, I think I would mostly echo kind of what's been said, which is problem solving is maybe the number 1 thing we look for, especially with engineers. Really, you're just problem solving all day. That's the entire job. It's like, how do you decompose this problem? How do you then solve its individual steps? That's programming in a nutshell. So if you're good at problem solving and you don't have all the technical skills, that's okay. We can teach you kind of the rest of it. You can't teach ambition. You can't teach a drive. So like, you're really looking for that sort of stuff. We expect to train some people. The nature of technology just is that things are changing so fast. And even for us who are super deep into the technology, like next week, an entire system that we made may be uprooted by something that comes out or that we made or whatever. So you have to be adaptable, you have to be constantly learning, and that's just part of the job. We expect that. That's mostly it.
You said a lot about engineering. Is that a degree that's required?
Yeah.
You talk about training people too, so is there a mixture?
We have kind of an all of the above approach, which is we care 100% about what you can do. If you have a 4-year degree, that's cool. If you have a 2-year degree, that's cool. If you have a 6-year degree, that's cool. If you have no degree, still cool. The nature of engineering is such that we need everybody. We want the people who go to the boot camps, we want the people who went to community college. We need everybody in on this problem because there just aren't enough programmers. Software is in everything now. It's everywhere. There's no industry that's not being turned upside down by software. So, and that's in the US, that's in the hands of about 3 million people. So that is not a lot of programmers to do everything that we're talking about, which is why it's a little more meritocracy, that's the word I'm looking for. We care a lot less about whether you're a credentialed and a lot more about what you can do. So if you went through a 4-year program and that gave you an amazing skill set, that's awesome. If you are just really passionate about technology, you take the time to learn it on your own, and you can prove to us that you know your stuff, we'll take you. And some of the best programs we have, no college degree. Some of the best programs we have, college degrees. So there's like the full spectrum on our side, and we do not exclude anybody because of that. We will consider everybody who applies based off of what they present to us. So really documenting what you have built is much more important to us than almost anything else. So we can take a look at what you've done.
Do you want to talk about what sort of education you look for?
I just had one little quick question about, in an interview, how do you judge problem solving or creativity? Sure. What are the things that you're looking for from some?
So before the interview, there's a couple things that go into this for us, but we have you take a coding test, and that's general computer science knowledge, more or less, and we also look at your portfolio. If you don't have one, that's a pretty big red mark against you. You're very risky unknown for us. So we want to see stuff that you've written. And then inside of the interview, we will give you problems and basically talk through it and just see kind of how you go through the steps. We'll literally say, okay, you need to write software for a vending machine. How do you do it? What are the steps? What do you need? And we don't necessarily get into the details, some companies do, but we'll kind of break down that problem and see if what they're doing makes sense. And it's really, really hard to fake that when you're in the room with the interviewer. It's really easy for us to tell this person has no idea what they're talking about. So it's mostly that. If they pass those first few things, we can see, okay, this person has a track record, and we can see stuff that they've made. And then just kind of drill down and talk through it. Like, here's an example problem that we have. How would you solve it? I don't know if that answered your question.
I want to add to that. I'm kind of chuckling because a group of IT employers I work with in Des Moines, they run into that problem where it's kind of like a prove it, right? It's nice you get this degree and whatever, but we need you to be able to code Java. So they'll send people like a test like that, and a vendor that they work with, it'll actually turn on the webcam and kind of record the person, and it's just staggering the amount of people that try to cheat on that stuff. So it's clear there's like a group of people working on it, or it's just not the person that they're trying to get. And it's like, you're tech people, how do you not get this, that it's like being recorded? And again, like you're cheating to get a job to do what you're cheating about, so how is this actually going to work in the long term? But yeah, it's kind of amusing when you try to do, it's very much a skill-based role or career, and you're seeing that in a lot of industries where employers are honestly having to have that difficult conversation about, it's under 3% unemployment, I can't find enough people, so do we need a 4-year degree? Do we even need a 2-year degree? Could I just get people as quickly as possible with this 2-month training program through Hawkeye Community College or who it has to be? And it's having that honest conversation about what are we actually doing and what's necessary, which is great.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing. Especially when it comes to computer science, one of the analogies that we use is like, you need a lot less architects than you need construction workers. And that's really the same in software too. Like, not everybody needs a 4-year degree, not everybody needs a PhD. You want some of those people. But really, you need a lot of boots on the ground just doing kind of the stuff. Like, you're not sitting there inventing new computer science every day. You're just taking what you know, making useful stuff, and then you have the whole spectrum. So for us, that's kind of how we think about it is, be conscious of, okay, does this role really need somebody who has this sort of training? If so, make that really explicit. But also, don't over-credential roles that don't need them. Like, be more accepting of positions. Like, it's a junior engineer role. Doesn't matter. Like, just, you need these basic skills. If you got the skills, we want to talk to you.
Kevin, what kind of education are you looking for in your employees?
Well, it's kind of like Nick said. We run an aptitude test on people when we after the first interview, if we think they possibly have a chance to be there. So we give an aptitude test. It's about 40 questions, and it does decipher if they can problem solve and things like that. But I mean, they don't need calculus or anything complicated to do the test. It's mainly common sense stuff, and it's not that difficult. But it helps us quantify those that at least can think a little bit and know, because if they can do that, then we can progress them from there and train them ourselves. So, I mean, we would love to have 2-year degrees, sometimes even 4-year degrees, but it's not necessary for everybody that works at Crichton. So, I mean, you can start for me, I've had kids out of high school start for 22, 25 bucks an hour and go from there. And so, you know, it's up to them somewhat as well.
What other questions do we have? Go ahead.
So you spoke a lot about the interview. What are you looking for on resumes to get to the interview step?
Honestly, I don't sit in many of the interviews anymore.
Sure.
So, our HR handles most of that. But we look a lot for attitude. If there's an attitude that they're willing to learn, that's what we basically look for. For our skill set, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it we can train. And we're willing to do that if they have the right attitude. Because they have to fit our culture. And if they don't fit our culture, we can't hire them. And it works both ways. They got to fit for us, we got to fit for them. So it's a two-way street there. But that's probably the biggest thing on our interviews is on resumes. We look for, do we think they would fit the culture that we have at Crichton? And if we don't feel that, then we pass and move on.
What's an indicator on a resume that they might or might not fit your culture?
If somebody has jumped around every year to a different job for the last 5, 10 years, that to us is an indicator that they're not going to be a long-term employee. And if we have to train, we really don't want to do that because we'll just be throwing our money away.
Yeah, I would love to have a
Yeah.
answer. Thank you.
I would second that in terms of if I see a resume and it's got job after job after job after job, the only time I would make an exception to that would be if it's a series of like summer jobs only and they're getting some experience. But if I see I worked here for a couple of months, or in my case, it might be jobs like that, you know, or a few months here, a few months there, that's an indication to me that if I hire them, past behavior is a predictor of future behavior in our book, and we do behavior-based interviewing, so that would kind of ex-nay the person unless I see that. I've had some situations where someone will apply and they have no work history. I just hired a gal to work in our assisted living. She'd been very involved in school, and that's why she hadn't had any work history. And so she made a point to not only apply, send her resume, and call, but didn't do it to the point where she was annoying.
Sure.
You know, and kind of asked a lot of questions, wanted to know what it would take to be, to qualify for a position, and did her research. And then, so I scheduled her and talked to her, and based on the things she did in school, kind of gave me a good feeling that she would be someone I should take a chance on. So she's been with me only a month right now, but you know, I'm hoping it works out.
So my answer is a little different, and I would agree with all that. If somebody's jumping around a lot, that's definitely a red flag. But the nature of the tech industry in particular is that 2 years, that's like the average stay at a tech company. The average tenure at Google is like 3.5 years, which is not long. Even for jobs that most people would consider maybe the best job you can get, right? So for us, it's like we have to consider everybody. Like we can't necessarily opt out or anything like that. It's definitely another data point for us, though, especially if you're kind of early in your career. That makes me a little more leery. But as far as like what we really want to see on a resume or something like that is, show us what you've done. That's work experience and that's this portfolio. I will keep harping on that point because it's one of the things that the computer science industry is really missing. It's entirely possible for us to find people who have 10 years of experience and still don't know how to do the problem the way that we want it to be solved or something like that. So it's really important for us to be able to see what you've done. Work history is perhaps the second best indicator, just to see where you've worked with, who you've worked with, that sort of thing. So yeah, I would say that's most of it. A distant third, unfortunately for us, would be like the education. Obviously that's a nice data point on there. But I would rather see a really sharp resume that says, hey, by the way, I went to this school, I had these jobs, and this is kind of stuff that I worked on. Here's a link to my GitHub, and it's not, 8 dense pages of, terrible stuff. And one of the things that happens too, with tech resumes in particular, is that it becomes like just keywords everywhere. Like, all right, I did C++, and I did C, and I did PHP, and I did Java, and yada, 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 yada. That's not really that useful to me. I do want to know that you're a fit for the technology that I expect you to work with, but also, again, we may expect to teach you that. So highlight maybe the ones that are the most important to you, but you don't have to say, hey, by the way, I've been using Microsoft Word for 8 years. Okay, so is everybody who's applying for this job. So like, focus on the things that are really, really important, make it clean, make it readable.
I'm curious for the employers. So I used to work for our workforce development, and I did a lot of job training, and volunteering was always something that we tried to promote. There are all these statistics about volunteering. So that kind of speaks to your project stuff. Does somebody have projects? But I'm kind of curious. I'm being the panelist right now. But I'm kind of curious about the other industries, how they view volunteering, because we also see across the state, you see the 3 words starting to creep back up, no experience required, which kind of went away for a long time, and now it's starting to creep back up for a lot of entry-level careers. So I'm curious for the employers on the panel if you would roll volunteer experience in there as valid experience for your industries.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely would. There are a number of people in our industry that I know that write software for nonprofits or contribute to open source projects or help run charity streams. All that is awesome stuff that we like to see. And there's real, tech skills being put on display there that you're contributing. So that's absolutely, I would consider that part of the overall experience on your resume.
I had hired a lady that had worked, hadn't worked. She had only done volunteer work her whole life. Her husband was the breadwinner, and she stayed home and took care of the kids and was on volunteer committees and all that kind of stuff. And so that was absolutely good enough for me, and she's been a great employee, and she just, wanted to do something to give back. And she doesn't have the skills to do the higher level positions, but she can create a pleasant dining experience for the residents we have, so it's worked out well.
Yeah, we could do that as well. We have to be a little mindful on age and things like that, but yeah, that's an option for sure.
A little bit of what I was hearing is almost, there's kind of a gap to bridge there as far as connecting with that generation. I mean, we teach a lot. I'm from Hawkeye Community College, and so we're teaching a lot of skills, and we have some of the soft skills built in there. But how do we better help the business community to connect to either students or people coming to us for that as a resource? And are there communities out there that you know of through your connections professionally, either in Iowa or out throughout the country, that are doing that well? Are there models out there that you're aware of that help to connect students with business in a better way?
We belong to it's called the PMA, Precision Metal Forming Association, and they do have an arm of that has just actually relatively new, where they're trying to work what you're talking about, work through that. I honestly don't know of anything else in our industry that we have, but for educators, quite honestly, the best thing that I think would be for you guys to come out and tour our place, and so you could physically see. Even if it's just for a half hour or hour, I can walk you through the shop and show you what our guys are doing and what we're looking for. That is probably the best way to get a feel for it.
Oh, did you have a comment here? Oh, I've got lots of comments. My name's Stacy McCoy. I'm the labor relations manager for John Deere Waterloo Works, and we employ about 3,000 production employees. And just by nature alone, we probably hire 150 or so. And for the last several years, eons probably, John Deere could say, we're going to need some people. We take applications and we get really good people. And we probably take them away from some of the smaller manufacturers in the area. And we're recognizing very quickly that paradigm or that attitude is not going to last forever. And we're very eager to form these types of alliances, to figure out how to do things such as change our mindset that we don't have to go to college. just spent, I don't know how many $1,000 on a biology degree. You know, my daughter's making half of what she could have made if she'd have come to work at one of our factories, right? The point that I would like to emphasize with educators is there's lots of different skills and necessary and things that we would like, but there are there's a common theme there among all of them. And the resume, quite frankly, I spend, I don't know, 11 seconds looking at a resume, maybe, tops. That's old mindset. What we need to teach our kids, aside from, there are many ways to make money and be happy besides going to college and graduating in debt and trying to find a crappy job somewhere. Okay? That's one model. And we've taught our kids that if you don't go to college and do that, you're some kind of a failure. You know, and that's just wrong. That is wrong. In our factories, people can start and make a minimum of $20 an hour with tons of overtime, with fully paid for health care. They can work overtime, they can get profit sharing, they can get their school paid for if they want to study something else. They can transition to the salaried rank. So we got to change that mindset, and that's not going to take one conversation. And that's going to have to come from parents who have kids, right? I've got an 8th grader right now, you know, and my other 2 kids are bigger. There was no discussion about whether or not they were going to college. That was what was going to happen. I gave them no option, right? And that was probably wrong. Okay? We got to be willing to do it for our own kids before we can talk about doing it with other people's kids. Okay? Common theme are things like character and chemistry. You talk about teamwork, they fit in with the culture. Character, showing up for work on time when you don't want to go to work. How many people get up every day wanting to go to work? Okay? I'm at about 15%. Right? But yeah, we got to teach that. I don't know how to teach people, kids, that employers value that. I'll take somebody that shows up every day that's maybe not quite as on the ball as somebody that misses a day every other week. Right? We've got to teach kids how to communicate. They think they can know how to communicate. That's not communicating. How to sit down in a group of people and talk through a problem, listen, not just talking, but listening to what the other person's saying, dealing with facts, making very objective decision making, right? Teaching children how to do that transcends industry and, is it healthcare, is it tech, is it manufacturing or whatever. Now, being mindful that all the time, each time that goes by, the minimum level of skill required to work anywhere is coming up and up and up, right? Deere used to hire muscle, do the bolt, pound in the pin, do whatever. Now we got computers everywhere in our factories. We've got robots, we have all kinds of automation. Employees are interfacing with that stuff all the time. We expect kids to kind of know how to do that. And I say kids, but people. Educators should teach this transcendental stuff. Problem solving, teamwork, listening, work ethic. Talk about grit. Get the grit book and teach that for a semester. Talk about the value of sticking to something in spite of failure and difficulty. There's extreme value in that. And if we can teach that to our kids, we can figure a lot of this other stuff out. And I don't know that a lot of kids get that now.
You're making
It's
incredible
you're dealing with millennials, right? Are they millennials now? Everything has to have a purpose, they have to be valued, they have to know where they're going, they have to know how they have to be recognized.
I tell you what,
have
I'm
to,
gonna email you and we're gonna get you up here
all
next
this kind of
year.
stuff. So I don't want to monopolize
We've got a question back here.
the discussion, but that's what I would encourage educators to think about. And it's going to be scary changing from the mindset. It's going to be scary and feel really uncomfortable.
Thanks for that. I mean, I do think a lot of our schools are moving towards that. I mean, I think when you heard about the CAPS and the Early Career Center, that is what that stuff is all about. When you hear about Leader in Me, those programs, that is what all of those things are about. So I do think it is happening. I mean, and schools are doing their best, but you're right. I mean, I think it's the culture of where we're at right now. So it is a community doing that. So the good news is I do think schools recognize that and they are trying to look at the whole child and not just, and honestly, being a parent and, involved with the schools, there's still way too much emphasis put on grade points and grades and things like that. And I'm guilty of it too. But, I would rather, we really need to have everyone wanting kids taking challenging courses or taking risks, doing something they're not comfortable doing, rather than just getting a 4-point. And that is a mindset
I love the
that
passion in
transcends
this
that.
conversation.
Yeah.
That's why we're here today.
Right.
And our next session, our next session will give you a chance to have these discussions and talk about what those next steps are. That's the whole point of this.
So I wasn't going to interrupt you. I just wanted to say we are.
No, I love the passion, but keep it going and keep those conversations going.
Yeah.
But I just want to share a couple things. So I work here at the AEA, but previous to this year, this is my first year here, I was an educator in Mason City for 14 years. And I'm going to piggyback off what you just said, because I think if you were to go into a school, you would be absolutely amazed at what those teachers are doing and trying to do to prepare these kids for futures that, to be honest with you, teachers don't even know what they're preparing them for. So those are the skills that we're preparing them for, is that grit and that resilience and that perseverance and the communication. And the educators do what they can with the resources that they have. So here's something I would encourage you to do as businesses, and I'm doing this from speaking from personal experience because we did this in our school and it was amazing. We did something, and I think Cedar Rapids, we modeled it from Cedar Rapids. It was called the Billy Madison Project. And what we did is we invited community members from Mason City into our school, and they followed students for a day. Completely. Teachers changed nothing from what they were doing for that day. They came in, we treated them like students, and then they got a chance. They went through our 5-6 building, they went through our 7-8 building, and then they went through our high school. And then they actually sat down with all the administrators and some teacher leaders, and they talked about the difference that school is. So the business world coming into a school system doesn't realize how much it's actually changed from that traditional sit and get. They don't realize what's actually happening in the school. And then it gave us the opportunity to hear from them and saying, hey, this is what we saw, this is what we need. And then we did that 3 years in a row. And it was an amazing experience for the educators, for the students, and for the business to build partnerships. Because what came out of that then, and I was a 6th grade teacher at the time, what came out of that then is I was able to bring in businesses to my 6th graders who, people are scared of kids that age. That's pretty young. And even into like 4th and 5th grade. And we built some business partnerships, and those businesses would present to students, and students would then solve those problems for those businesses. That's what came out of something like that. And so that's what I would encourage businesses to think about, and teachers that are here, because there are a lot of people that raise their hand for educators. I would really encourage you to think about how can I invite and open my door to bring business in so that we can build that partnership together so everybody gets what they want.
And that can go both ways, right?
Yeah.
Kevin's idea of having teachers come in for an hour or two and just see what the new workplace is like. So maybe that's something that can go both ways. I love that idea. Keep that conversation going in our next session.
So 2 quick thoughts. The Department of Education has the Work-Based Learning Intermediary Network, which is an awesome resource. In case anybody, okay, we have an intermediate, okay, there's always one in there somewhere. Underutilized, awesome resource. Their entire role and purpose is to build relationships between employers and educators. So they are there, they're just maybe not known all the time, and that's unfortunate because it's an awesome resource. Another new development in the Department of Education, we're building, we called our work-based learning a virtual clearinghouse. It's tied not directly to Future Ready Iowa, but it ties very nicely into the goal of 70% of our workers having education above high school by 2025. But the idea is that it will create, it's an online site where employers can post projects for students around the state, regardless of location, to jump onto projects and to be able to learn some of that work-based experience, so that when they hit the ground running after high school or after college or whatever, they've actually had a job in that industry in which they want to work. Did they like it? Did they not like it? Both are successes. So they haven't wasted a lot of their time and money going into something that they're not going to like. So that is currently being developed. There's still a lot of work on what that might look like. It's set to launch in July 2019, so they've got a lot of work to get that done. But like I said, it's trying to add some equity around the state, particularly to the rural areas of our state. So an employer in Des Moines or Quad Cities or Waterloo or wherever can post a project where students from around the state can then jump on to be a part of and get some of that real world experience. Projects and work-based learning, as well as local initiatives that somebody might be able to tie on. So it's trying to bring a much broader spotlight to those opportunities to people who maybe would not have had them otherwise. So lots of cool information. Again, you can grab my card, I'd be happy to talk to you or put you in contact with the person that was hired to build that, although he was hired like 2 weeks ago, so he is brand new. He's here somewhere. He's not in this session, but I'd be happy to put you in contact with him.
So I've got a question about where you see the most promise within your industries. So what those careers look like. If you were talking to your son or daughter or niece or nephew or a young person from one of the classrooms represented here, and they asked you where you see the most promise within their industry, what would you recommend to them? Which career paths would you recommend? What sort of education would that look like?
Well, I think I already touched on it, but for us, obviously, it's the automation and the robotics for manufacturing. That's key to our survival. And so whatever these kids can acquire knowledge-wise in that regards is huge. We have to have those engineers that are coming up, and obviously the automation is just key. If we don't automate, I won't be here in another 5 to 6 years. I'll be out of business. So we have to keep doing it, and unfortunately, I am not a Fortune 500 company, so it's tough. It's tough for little guys like me having 100 employees to compete with John Deere. I'm sitting here with Deere and Viking Pump and Blackhawk Engineering and Hydro, and they're all hiring. We're all hiring, and so why is somebody going to come work for little old Crichton when they go work for Deere? I mean, it's challenging for guys like us to do that, but where we win the race, in my opinion, hopefully, is in culture. We got to set a different culture. And that's what we've worked hard to change over the last couple of decades. I've been doing this for almost 45 years now, and I've seen such a change in our company from where we started to where we are today. There's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. The culture, the kids today want a culture that's different than when I grew up as a baby boomer. It's not the same, and I have to learn how to adapt to that. So, yeah.
Well, obviously, the aging population and the needs for care, whether it be at home, for your seniors, for your parents, for your grandparents, is the numbers are just going up. We need more and more people to help support folks and hopefully help them stay in the home as long as possible. So, encouraging them to seek a career in healthcare, obviously nursing, that's going to go, that's gangbusters. We need people who will thrive on our population. The thing is, most people, when you hear them talk about nursing, careers in nursing, when I interview them, I go, oh, what do you want to do when you get your RN? Well, I want to go work with, neonatal or, obstetrics or, whatever. And that's what they want to go to Mayo, they want to go where it's exciting, and geriatrics is not usually on the top of their list. But the one thing about our environment is when you work as a nurse in our environment, you get that long-term relationship. You have an opportunity to make a difference in the quality of their life. And it can be so impactful for not only the person who's delivering the care, but the person receiving it. It can be extremely rewarding. So, you know, if they have a passion, if you know of someone who seems to be a very sensitive and caring individual and empathetic and that kind of thing, this might be the direction to go. There's definitely lots of opportunity.
So, for the tech side of things, I would just say, like, anyone and everyone should get into computing. There's no person in this room or person on this planet that isn't going to benefit from knowing a little bit of programming. You don't need 4 years of experience to do something cool. Kids can learn it. It really is about problem solving. So when I talk to young people and they're saying, you know, what should I do? Should I consider this? That's the main thing. Like, just get started. The web, you can work on the web. Do you want to work with robots? You can work with robots. If you want to do big data, you can do big data. Like, there's so much you can do. And then say there is a specific industry you want to get into. Maybe you want to work in agriculture. Maybe you want to work in finance. Like, you can still do that through computing. Computing is in every industry. It's turning the whole world upside down. So if you want to build video games or build tractors, you know, software's there. So it's really a question of, do you enjoy programming? Like, if you enjoy that, if you enjoy problem solving, figure that out early, and you don't need to go to college to figure that out. College should be like your second step. You say, I love this, now I want to go really deep on it. So that's the advice that I would give, and also for everyone in this room. Like, if you learn just a little bit of Python, just a little bit, I was talking to the last group about this, you can automate some things in your life that you may very well hate doing that come up all the time, and it will save you time. And maybe you only need 1 or 2 hours of training to figure that stuff out. So I would definitely recommend, there's tons of free resources. Feel free to come up and talk.
Give us an example of something we could automate.
So my quintessential example here was when I was in the entrepreneurship program at UNI, we had to do business calculations for our business plans. And there's all kinds of software that you could use that for. Some people did it by hand. Some people made Excel spreadsheets. For me, I made a Python program that was 25 lines and ran like 1,000 simulations. It was like an afternoon instead of like a semester project. Now I was a little ahead of the curve on that one, but that's the sort of thing of like, okay, you know what? I spent a lot of time, you know, doing this thing, especially if it's repetitive or involves numbers or something like this. You know, maybe that spreadsheet can go away and become something that just automatically runs for you and sends you an email. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that you don't need a ton of training to do. So I would just encourage everybody to get a little bit of knowledge on it, and maybe you'll find some fun passion.
Joe, is that consistent with what you learned from doing the career pathways?
I think so. So when we talk about kind of the 21st century skills, it's a lot of that problem solving, the critical thinking. But tech is just going everywhere. It's not its own industry. And while Nick is clearly a very intelligent person in Python and whatever, I think there's that stereotype that you have to be like a child prodigy to work in tech. You don't. And I appreciate what Nick said. You've got the ground level kind of remedial stuff that is done. And although that doesn't sound exciting, it points out that everybody can do this. This is not, you're just born like a tech genius. Unfortunately, a lot, when you see like tech careers in media and entertainment, it's like you're a hacker or you're like a prodigy. That's just simply not true. That's not reflective of the actual market. So I would strongly suggest when I'm talking to younger people, it's start getting some of those tech skills, explore it, but don't give up. If you're passionate about healthcare, you're passionate about building stuff, and you would be a good fit in manufacturing, still get some of that tech stuff while you're exploring those industries, because then you're going to have that skill set that you can fall back on regardless of industry. So I guess that would be my best advice. Follow what you're passionate about, because that's going to make it easier. That, you know, getting up in the morning, it's not going to be that paycheck, it's not going to be whatever else. It's going to be, I actually like what I do and I feel like what I'm doing is making a difference. But having that kind of, you know, those cards in your back pocket to fall back on is very, very important. As we know, there's a lot of uncertainty in the future.
I think those are good notes to end on. Sounds like there's really promising careers in each of your companies and in the Cedar Valley in general, especially in these industries. So thank you for your time. Let's give them a round of applause. Obviously, we haven't solved solved anything, you know. So sometimes in these conversations, we find out more about issues than we find solutions. And so that's what this next part of our program is about today. So I really encourage, if you can, please stick around. We're going to be doing some action planning. So you've probably learned more about issues that you already knew existed, or maybe issues that you had never heard about. So keep those in mind and start thinking about what solutions might look like. And that's what this next session is all about, how we can approach this as a community so that this is a partnership of how we can use our population that we have here, how we can bring new population, how we can educate our students for these careers of the future. So please stick around, we're really excited about it, but thanks for joining us in here.